Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining today's Resideo webinar session where we are going to provide an overview of our zoning application specifics and accessories. My name is Jamie Quanrud and I'm part of the Resideo training team, and on behalf of all of us, I'd like to welcome you to our training session today. Before we get started with our technical zoning presentation, I'm going to cover just a few administrative items. On the next slide, every week we give you 2 opportunities to join us and learn about our products. So please join us every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time and every Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. For a schedule of our future webinars on a variety of topics, please visit resideo.com/webinars for more information. And we also wanted to make it easy for you to find the schedule of our upcoming webinars, as well as the recordings of our previous webinars. So on that website that you see featured on your screen, we have added the ability for you to sort by business type. And on that image on your screen, we have sorted by the comfort business, which brings up all the webinars that we are offering in the month of May for our customers. Additionally, you can see that all of our previously recorded webinars are hosted on that website for your reference as well. And for those contractors who are joining us for today's live session and you are interested in earning 1 NATE continuing education credit, there are just a few things to note. If you have provided your NATE ID on your registration form, we are going to submit that information to NATE for your attendance of today's live session, and we don't need any additional information from you at this time. If you did not provide us with your NATE ID on your registration form for this webinar, and you'd like to receive credit for attending today's live session, we do ask that you email your first name, your last name, your NATE ID, and the date of the session you attended to homes.university@resideo.com within 1 week from today. Any requests sent outside of 1 week from today's live training cannot be processed. And as a reminder, we can only process requests for NATE credits when you attend the live webinar session, and we are unable to process requests if you do watch a recorded version of this session. If you'd like more information about the NATE program, please visit their website at www.natex.org. And then one quick note before we begin our technical presentation today: all attendees are muted. However, if at any point during our technical presentation you'd like to ask a question, and we welcome questions, please use that Q&A feature found in your Zoom webinar controls. We are reserving the last 15 minutes of our time together today to answer any questions that you may have. So as we progress through our zoning technical training today, please be sure to ask those questions in that Q&A feature so that we can address it at the end of today's session. Now we're going to turn things over to Rod McKinnon, who is one of our contractor development specialists in North Carolina. Rod has been in the HVAC industry for over 40 years, and we are thrilled that he is here with us to share his zoning expertise and knowledge with us. We're so glad to have you here today. Rod, the floor is yours.
Okay, we have a 2-zone board, the HZ221. That is 2-zone that specializes for heat pumps only. And then the boards that I think most of our contractors, especially those that are in the retrofit business, are going to be more familiar with is the HZ322 board, because it is able to take care of your standard heat pumps, as well as a 2-heat, 2-cool HVAC system. And then the top of the food chain is our HZ432 zoning board, which has dual fuel built into it, as well as a number of other goodies that I will be covering for you as we progress through the slides. So if my Vanna will go to the next slide. All right, good deal. Okay, so as I mentioned, the HZ311 board is a 3-zone, and it works with your single stage gas or oil furnaces, as well as the single stage air conditioner. I want you to see that we actually implemented some logic into our numbers. So the first number after the Z indicates the number of zones that are available to you. And the second number in red indicates the stages of heating. And the third number in blue indicates that it's got a single stage of cooling. We do have the ability, once you strip your wires back, to just simply press on the terminals so that you can insert up to 2 wires per terminal, and that's got a nice benefit to it. We've got some neat features that you can take advantage of if you have a variable speed blower. And we'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later. But since this is a basic zoning panel, there's no configuration as far as making adjustments to the high limits or low limits or anything like that. So if we'll go to the next zoning panel. Okay, so the HZ221K, that is our heat pump zoning panel. So for heaven's sakes, don't think that somehow you can trick it into being a gas, because it's always going to energize that Y circuit. So as you can see, 2 zones, 2-stage heat for the basic compressor heat, as well as the auxiliary heat that a heat pump offers, and obviously 1 stage of cooling. By the way, the K designation on the end indicates that that's a kit. So therefore, you will have a discharge air temperature sensor in there that's extremely important, as well as a standalone transformer that will help prevent Murphy's Law from becoming a part of your job site. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide. Now, the HZ322 is our 3-zone board, and in addition to being a very versatile board that you're able to configure, it does have RedLINK capabilities. So you're going to be able to utilize a 2-stage furnace with this, as well as a 2-stage AC. So this is a fantastic feature to have when you're doing zoning, because obviously when only one zone's calling, practically never will you need the second stage of a furnace heat or the second stage of an air conditioning either. So by having the advantage of a lower amount of heat and a lower amount of cooling being put into that particular zone, in addition to the fact that the speed on your blower is probably significantly less, it makes for a very, very sweet zoning system. Okay, so obviously the HZ, the 3, indicates that you've got a 3-zone maximum with this particular board. And on the left-hand side of this zoning panel, what you will find is an A, B, C, and D terminal strip. And that's what the wireless adapter would be connected to, utilizing 18-gauge wire if you decided to take advantage of an easy way of utilizing a RedLINK thermostat. It also has the ability to slow down a variable speed blower to make the system have better manners. And when you go into the menu to set it up, it is really excellent for those contractors that perhaps do not do zoning that much on a regular basis, because it's going to be asking you simple questions as you progress through the menu. Questions like, how many stages is your furnace? How many stages is your air conditioner? Things along the line of, how long would you like for the purge time to be? Where do you want your high limit set? Where do you want your low limit set? So by having all of these clearly on that LED display, LCDs display at the bottom, makes it an excellent choice for the contractor out there. And it has a checkout where you are able to check at the very end of your installation just to make sure you have properly crossed your T's and dotted your I's. Okay, if you'll go to the next. Okay, so now we have the King of the Hill, which is our HZ432 zoning panel. It is a 4-zone panel, and once again, it is RedLINK capable once you add that wireless adapter to it. So here's what's important for you to understand. We can do a 2-stage furnace, and we can do a 2-stage air conditioner, but this is the panel that you absolutely, unequivocally must select if you have a 2-stage heat pump compressor. Because I need for you to think about, just take a moment and think about the fact that you've got 2 stages of compressor heat and the auxiliary heat. So essentially, you've got 3 stages of heat capability along with the 2-stage cooling capability. Now, for those of you all that like to go the extra mile as far as making your systems fancier than the average 95% of your customers, if you did decide to stage the strip heat, you can actually have 2 stages of strip heat in addition to your 2 stages of compressor heat. So just a small footnote for the capabilities of this particular board. So that I don't forget to talk about the variable speed blower control. Perhaps many of you that have utilized our zoning systems for a number of years may have noticed where the equipment connections are made that there is a DSBK terminal there. Well, what this allows you to do is if you've got a single stage compressor operation, but you are utilizing a variable speed air handler, many of the major competitors out there designate the 24-volt circuit that controls the speed of the blower as a BK circuit. Our Linux friends use the DS, if I'm not mistaken, and then many of the OEMs just simply call it a DHUM terminal. And when you take 24 volts away from that on a variable speed blower motor, it'll typically slow down to approximately 70% of its normal CFM. So here's what the Honeywell engineers have done for you. When you only have a call for 1 zone on an initial startup, we powered down that DSBK terminal. We take the 24 volts away. So what that means is with that 65 to 70% airflow, you're not bypassing as much air through your damper, and it's your bypass damper. So you've got a quieter system, a more efficient system, and it's some pretty low-hanging fruit with some very, very simple wiring. Once again, it's got the intuitive setup and then a important checkout that you'll need to do at the very, very end. Okay, Jamie, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here's what I want you to understand when you glance at this particular slide. And the zone board that we're showing here is our 311, and it does not have the ABCD terminals for the wireless adapter. But I want your main takeaway to be in the top half of this slide is the fact that if you want a thermostat, an zoning system that's connected to the internet, and let's just pretend that that 311 had perhaps been there for 5 years or so. Well, you don't have to take out the board that's been chugging along just fine. You can actually add the kits that we're showing in those particular numbers. So what we're trying to convey is that when you get the YTHX 9421R 5127 kit, it's going to have in it a RedLINK Internet Gateway along with the Color Prestige thermostat and the equipment interface module. Okay, and if you were to get another Prestige IEQ kit, the one that ends numerically with 5101, then that particular one includes an outdoor temperature sensor. And you're going to be able to get that outdoor temperature sensor and in the earlier kit, that internet gateway at a far, it's going to be a less out-of-pocket cost than if you'd bought the components individually. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, if you just simply wanted to take advantage of our Wi-Fi 9000 thermostats, well, then if you've got enough wires to power the common on the sub base, they will work perfectly with the wires that were already there. Okay, Jamie, if you'll go to the next slide, please. We're basically showing you the same way to upgrade the 221 with the same attributes. And in the nomenclature there, you see that we have the ability to utilize some special terminals on that equipment interface module for alerts. And they can be everything from water in the drain pan to dirty filters and just many, many other things. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the various alert messages. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in some of the later slides. Okay, next. Okay, so now we've got your 322, and when you utilize the Prestige kits that are shown there, they have some attributes that go beyond just using the wireless adapter. And so if you've got a customer that absolutely unequivocally wants to have all the bells and whistles, more can be achieved by going with those particular kits than going through a wireless adapter that we'll talk about in just a little while. And then on the bottom, same deal. We just want to make sure that we've got all the control wires going to the Wi-Fi 9000s for proper operation as well as communication with the homeowner's router. Okay, next, please. Okay, and then so with the 432, basically the same thing, but with this, we're going to have the ability to do dual fuel. So with the top setup, what we are doing here is that one wireless RedLINK outdoor temperature sensor is going to communicate with both of those Prestige thermostats so that they will know what the outdoor temperature is. And basically this helps the balance point portion to take place in a dual fuel application, so that below balance point we'll be bringing on the gas or oil furnace, and then above that we'll be operating the heat pump. With the lower system, you see, it's a situation where with the Wi-Fi 9000s, that zoning board needs to know the outdoor temperature. And the way we accomplish that is with the old-timey outdoor temperature sensor, which obviously you want to strive to get it into the shade with the most accurate reading, perhaps on the north side of the house if possible. And we do ask you to put it in a separate wire sheath and not just run it out in the bundle of wires that's going out to the air handler, the outdoor condensing unit. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at some of the versatility that you have with our 4-zone board. You've heard me refer to the THM4000R, which is our wireless adapter. Very, very simple. It's got the ABCD terminals on it that connect up with that 18 gauge wire. And it can be run up to 200 feet if for some reason you were in a commercial application, and perhaps we're having some issues with the signals. Very, very practically never exist in a residential. And here's what you're able to do. You have the option to utilize 3 of our VisionPRO thermostats communicating with that 4000R, and they can be battery powered, or if you just simply want to run 2 wires so that you power it up hot and common, you can do that also. But just in a retrofit application, when you can utilize batteries and put the thermostats anywhere you please, it is a phenomenal way to go. Okay, so the outdoor temperature sensor in this scenario is actually going to communicate what the outdoor temperature is to that 4000R wireless adapter. So that's how the zoning board knows whether to operate the gas furnace or oil furnace below the balance point or the heat pump, and that's how that's being communicated to it. Now here's the thing about it. The RedLINK gateway that you see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is going to talk not only to the all 4 thermostats, but it's actually, if all 4 of those thermostats are communicating with the wireless adapter, you've only used up 1 channel of 4 channels that are available in that particular gateway. So in that particular scenario, that's a way that you can actually have more than 4 thermostats on a gateway when it's in a zoning application with a wireless adapter. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so now what we've included here is by utilizing the equipment interface module that you see in the bottom center of your screen, that THM 5421R 1021 is going to give you some attributes that will allow us to do the monitoring that I was talking to you about, that we'll see in some subsequent slides. And you'll also see where it opens up the door for us to have some IAQ control from our zoning systems. So now that particular device is going to be hardwired probably into zone 1. You make that particular choice, and it essentially becomes the sub base for one of the 4 thermostats that you see on the screen. And so all the thermostats are learning what the outdoor temperature is from 1 outdoor air sensor. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, and so what we're showing you here is your options when you utilize our Prestige thermostats. So here's the thing about it. Many people don't realize that we sell a THX 9421R 5021. And now that's just the thermostat by itself. And even though probably 95% of the time it's sold in a kit with the equipment interface module, in a zoning application, we have the ability to make transmit heat-cool calls from the 3 various zones that they're serving, and they'll be transmitting that signal to the wireless adapter, the 4000R. Okay, but here's the thing about it. We do have to have 2 wires going to the subbase of that thermostat, because that gorgeous color screen that you can set up with any color combination that you please would be too significant of drain on just some batteries. So we've got to have 24 volts, but here's what I want you to understand. It can be 24 volts from any source whatsoever. It does not have to come from the zoning panel. So this gives you additional flexibility. Once again, that outdoor temperature sensor with the lithium batteries in there will transmit the radio signal of what the outdoor temperature and humidity is to all 4 thermostats that are being utilized, as well as communicating through that 4000R what the outdoor temperature is to the zoning board itself. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide, please. So my favorite thermostat on the planet happens to be the VisionPRO. Well, it was actually the VisionPRO RedLINK, but it's the Wi-Fi gives you some awesome opportunities. So let's dive into what the Wi-Fi brings to the table here. Now, since we're using a Wi-Fi thermostat, we have got to have all the wires, the control wires, as well as the common and the hot wire come into the sub base of the thermostat. Now we do have a wire saver device, so if you're one wire short, it has the abilities to send zeros and ones down one of its wires. It's a K terminal. That'll take the place of operating your G and your Y circuit. So since we can handle both of those particular functions from one wire with the zeros and ones going down it, then that helps us get to where we need to be if you're just one wire short of having what you need. So basically, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, and now we've got the RedLINK thermostat. So here is where their flexibility comes in. You see the one in the center of the house, it was easy to run all the hard wires to the sub base of that particular thermostat. So perhaps the contractor decided to go that particular route. But the one on the top floor as well as the one on the right side of your screen is 100% battery operated, and they will be communicating the heat cool calls to the wireless adapter to the left of the zoning board. Now you see the outdoor temperature sensor, hopefully on the north side of the house in the shade, and it is transmitting the outdoor temperature and the humidity to all three thermostats that you see. And it even transmits it to the portable comfort control, which you see right here. And this particular device has the ability, depending on how you set it up, it can utilize control all three thermostats in the house. And in fact, in light commercial applications, we've had them, you can go all the way up to controlling 16 RedLINK thermostats. So sweet 16 if you decide to take it that far. Now, if you were to only pair it with one thermostat, it's a situation where it actually can be a temperature sensor when you press this device button. But if you control more than one thermostat with it, it lets you adjust the temperature on all the thermostats, but cannot be a temperature sensor itself. And up in the right-hand side of the house is where the customer's router is located, and we have our RedLINK device in that. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, and so basically, when you hook up the wireless adapter utilizing the 4 wires, you will tell at that point when you're setting up the zoning panel that you want it to be RF enabled, and you'll go through it telling that you know whether you want to have a wireless thermostat to zone 2 or zone 3. Perhaps you've got hardwires already running to zone 1. So it is a quick setup, and when you're synchronizing it with the RedLINK thermostats, it's as easy as just a button press in the middle. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what we see here is all your options that you have available when it comes to the RedLINK. So as you already know, with the RedLINK 8000, it can be 100% battery powered, as we see here, communicating with the wireless adapter. Its little brother, the RedLINK 6000, and there's a non-programmable 5000 that has the ability to be 100% battery powered. Now remember, we've got to have 24 volts coming to the sub base of the Prestige, so consequently, if it comes from the zoning panel, great, but it doesn't have to. I just don't want you thinking that we're digitally communicating over the R and C wire. Okay, we'll go to next, please. Okay, so what I want you to understand is with these zoning panels, you already know that we can use the gateway, we can use the outdoor sensor, and the portable comfort control. But one of the neat things that we brought to the marketplace is the ERM device if you don't have enough wires to the outdoor unit, but you're not able to utilize that in a zoning application. And if you're using the wireless adapter, we do not have the ability to use the wireless indoor sensor either if none of the thermostats are hardwired to the zone panel. Next slide, please. Okay, so with the wireless adapter and the setup that I've just showed you, we do not have the ability to control IAQ items. Next slide, please. Okay, so what we're showing you here is if you incorporate an equipment interface module, now you're going to have a dry set of contacts where you can operate a humidifier, a dehumidifier, or fresh air ventilator. So this allows you to give significant IAQ control to a zoning system. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so once again, we're taking advantage of utilizing wireless thermostats at the harder to reach zones within the house, communicating with the wireless adapter. But the Prestige IAQ is talking to the equipment interface device. And so consequently, it is wired into the zoning board just like a sub base of a thermostat. Next slide, please. Okay, I was talking to you about some of the sensors that could be utilized with the system. You see one of our water sensing controls, and it actually has a cable. So if one drop of water touches that cable, it will close a set of contacts, which you can have it put an alert on the screen of your thermostat. And if it's connected to the internet, it will communicate with you that way over the internet too. Good. Next slide, please. Okay, let me share with you something that most people do not perhaps fully embrace when it comes knowledge-wise to our T-Series thermostats. When you're hooking up a heat pump to that, we need for you to look down in the valley for your aux and E terminals. But intellectually, I want you to understand that all the thermostats come from the factory jumpered internally in the thermostat. And the reason I mention that is because you don't have a jumper that you need to install in the field like you did in the bad old days when we had separate aux and E terminals on the sub-base. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So I'm wanting to show you some of the common mistakes that can be easily overcome on zoning systems. So when it comes to heat pumps, and you've got a 2-heat, 1-cool heat pump, what you will see in the installation guide, even though it's not a bright red jumper like you see here on the screen, is for proper operation when you come off the sub-base of a T-Series thermostat with one wire. Let's just say you bring it to the W2 auxiliary terminal. You've got to put a jumper in there to the EW1 terminal, because if you don't, the emergency heat's not going to operate properly. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Now, by putting that critical jumper, and this is installed by you in the field from the W1E to the W2 on the output of the zoning board, that's the second portion of crossing the T and dotting the I to get a good operation from the zoning system in a heat pump application. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide. Okay, on our 432 zoning panels, once again, you see the W1E to W2 jumper that you've got to put in there if you're only using one wire from the sub-base of the thermostat. Next slide, please. And the jumper that you'll put on the output. Now, this is for single stage compressor heat pumps, okay? Next slide, please. Now, you got to stay on your toes if you're using a 3-heat, 2-cool heat pump, because Now, on that, you're going to need to do a jumper between the W1E and the W3 for proper operation of a traditional preheat to cool heat pump. And next slide, please. And you also will need to do it on the output to the equipment. Next slide, please. Okay, now for a dual fuel application, now think about this. We don't use any jumpers in that particular application, and the furnace is going to be like the emergency heat on the heat pump. We're never going to operate the compressor and the heat pump at the same time. So you see how we've come from the E terminal, just to keep it less confusing for the guys that are troubleshooting this, and just bring it to the E terminal on the zoning board input itself. Next slide, please. And since we'll never be operating the auxiliary heat at the same time as the compressor, that's why there's no jumpers on the output either. Next slide, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for walking us through this overview of zoning applications, Rod. For those of you who are attending today, our webinar session, you can find information on any of the zoning products that Rod covered during our technical training at the new Resideo.com website, which we have featured here on the screen. We're going to transition now to answering some common questions about zoning applications and zoning as an overview. So as a reminder, if you do have any questions on anything that Rod reviewed today, please do take a few moments and enter that information into the Q&A feature in your Zoom controls, and we'll do our best to address those questions in the remaining time that we have. We're going to bring up Frank Krigler to help answer some common questions here with Rod. Frank is a Resideo contractor development specialist in the Illinois market, and he's going to join Rod here to answer some questions.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right.
And thank you, Rod. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Frank. We're ready to go with common questions.
Wonderful, wonderful. First, thank you, Rod. And I would like to tell everybody that in this great place of North America, we have reps all across the country for you to reach out to. If you don't know who your rep is, please put it in the Q&A and we will get that answer to you. They are out there. They are ready, willing, and able to help you design a zoning system. And we've had multiple questions on T10 thermostats. Now we are going to have a T10 training. I think that's next week, is it not, Jamie?
That is correct, Frank. We have 2 sessions, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time and Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time to cover our T10 products.
Okay. Rod, we have a question here. Is there anything available for more than 4 zones?
Well, in the past, we've made something that was called a TAZ4 add-a-zone board, but the supplier was unable to provide us with the components that we needed to build that particular board. So consequently, there's a few out there to be found. But if you were to try to order a TAZ add-a-zone board from the Honeywell wholesaler, if he doesn't have it on the shelf, we probably aren't going to have it in stock. And it can only be utilized with the HZ432 zoning board because we have special terminals on there, 2 wires that digitally communicate with that add-a-zone board so that when zone 7 makes a call, it will have the board activate the equipment and configure the dampers in the proper way for that.
Okay, so the simple answer is not at this time. However, buckle your seatbelt because the way Resideo is going, we will in the future have not only up to 20 zones, but possibly wireless as well. Rod, I have a question here, and we can both answer this one. If I have a T10 with RedLINK and the current system uses an ABCD for the primary thermostat and the secondary thermostat with RedLINK, so as long as they understand that a T10 is a wired Wi-Fi thermostat, it is RedLINK 3.0, not RedLINK 2.0, so it's not backwards compatible. So it will not work with a 4000 adapter, and it does require 5 wires or a wire saver. Anything to add on that, Rod?
Yeah, just as long as they understand that, as long as they can get the wires to the sub base of the T10, they're ready to rock and roll with up to 20 third generation RedLINK sensors. And so I often have folks say, well, help me visualize where that would come in handy. Well, let's pretend that at the top of the stairs in a 2-story house, nobody sleeps in the hall where the thermostat is. So you've got the ability to go ahead and put the RedLINK sensor in the master bedroom and the kids' bedroom, and everybody can close their door for privacy and have perfect temperature control in the bedrooms where it's not paying necessarily any attention whatsoever to the temperature in the hall where nobody's sleeping.
And as Chuck said last week, whoever's paying the bills is the one that's going to be comfortable.
Okay, maybe we give them 2 sensors instead of 1, and that way they get a 66% vote versus the kids only getting a 33% vote. Yep.
Yeah, there's a question here. Are the panels for forced air zones only? And then hydronic with a question mark. And I know we do a lot of boilers in the Chicago area. So reach out to your Resideo CDS partner, and they can get you wiring diagrams. These can be used on hydronic, but they are very specific to the wiring. Another question about, can we go over 4 zones? The answer is not at this time.
Let me
Go ahead.
put something in that I wanted to mention and failed to mention during the presentation, and that is how incredibly important it is to do the system test mode on the 322 or the 432. And here's the reason why. When you want to make sure that your thermostats are configured properly. You want to make sure the wires from the thermostat to the board are configured properly. The jumpers are in properly, both the inlet and the output. And when you use the installer test mode and bypass the time delays in the thermostat by having them into the installer test mode, you can quickly make sure that zoning system does everything that you want it to do. Think of it as almost going to the car lot to buy a car, and you would want to do more than just crank it up and say, man, it idles really good here on the car lot, I'll take it. No, you probably want to take it for a test drive. So please just take a few extra minutes and put it through the installer test. You'll be able to see what kind of input is coming in from your thermostats in that LCD display on the 322 and the 432 zoning board, and bypass all the time delays, and you only have to contend with the time delays that are built into the equipment.
Okay, so coming from the south, I know you know a lot about dehumidifiers. How do I control multiple dehumidifiers in a large house if I have multiple zone systems?
Well, we're going to have an equipment interface module in there. So if you had multiple dehumidifiers, my guess is you might be trying to actually have perhaps a dehumidifier serving a larger zone. And so you would have the ability by closing a dry set of contacts on the equipment interface module to kick on the dehumidifier at the same time that you're turning on the blower and sending that warm, dry air to the zone that needs dehumidification.
Okay. Here's one that I thought you actually covered. Can you control IAQ products from a zone when using an EIM? And I think maybe they're asking, maybe it's if you can do IAQ from multiple zones with an EIM.
Okay, excellent question. Okay, and here's the thing that is really, really important. Let's just say that you've got a humidifier and you, let's say it's one of our steam humidifiers and you're wanting to humidify the entire house, but you're going to let thermostat number 1 be the thermostat that senses the humidity needs for the house. So on for example, on our steam humidifier as well as our bypass humidifiers, we have the ability, let's take the steam humidifier, to start the steam humidifier operating, and by utilizing an isolation relay that's in the circuitry to turn on the blower of the HVAC system without the zoning board having any clue whatsoever anything's going on with the G circuit. You say, well, gee, Rod, why are you so excited about that? Well, our dampers default to the open position, so now you're sending all the humidity to all the zones if none of them are calling for heat, instead of just dumping 22 gallons of humidity into zone 1 and satisfying that thermostat's call for humidification in a New York minute, to use some of the nomenclature we don't talk about down here in the South.
Okay. The new zone panel instructions, will they now include wiring diagrams using the T-series thermostats and jumper locations?
You know, I'm still sleeping a little bit at night, so I haven't looked into our most recent edition to see if they show that.
I would say this is one of those times. This is when you reach out to your Resideo contractor development specialist. These are the kind of answers that we can give you.
Absolutely.
We do have Rod and I'm sure everybody's got all these diagrams that we will email out to you.
Yep.
What bypass damper should be used when using a variable speed drive blower on a furnace? I think it's, or a heat pump.
Yes, our CPRD is truly, truly a breakthrough as far as the bypass damper technology. Yes, it's simple, but it does the job phenomenally well. We typically ask you not to go beyond 5 tons on our zoning systems using the CPRD bypass damper, but it has a phenomenal capability of giving the back pressure that the variable speed motors so desperately want to operate with good manners in a zoning system.
Yeah, and when you're using a variable speed motor, you still have to match the bypass to whatever your smallest damper. You still have to bypass the same amount, and the reason for that is startup. When a system starts up, you have to get by the safety of 1.5, and when you get by the safety, it will ramp back down to 1.0. That's the whole purpose of bypass. Another question, do I have to use internet gateway for all RedLINK systems?
Yes, if for the 2.0 RedLINK products, if you want to control them over the internet, a gateway has to be in the loop in some way, shape, or form. The only workaround is the 3.0 sensors on the T10.
Yeah, I think that's a trick question, because RedLINK 3.0 is a Wi-Fi thermostat. So yes, you do not need an internet gateway on a T10. And somebody's asking, in my introduction, I did say, you know, buckle up because we may go up to 20 zones, and they say that sounds like trouble.
No, 20 sensors. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
20 zones.
I was just biting my tongue on that one.
Okay, I'm upgrading to Wi-Fi thermostats with multiple zoning. What would be a good investment which can build or adapt future items like wireless zoning? That's an easy question.
Sure, I'll let you take it.
It smells like a T10. Or if we were playing Jeopardy, what is a T10?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you'll like this one, Rod. What is the DSBK terminal and how do I use it?
Okay, so that is utilized to slow down a variable speed blower by taking 24 volts off of it when only one zone is calling. So on the initial startup, if you've got that connected to the DSBK terminal, we will power down the dehume terminal. We're lying to the air handler. It may be the coldest, driest day of the year, but we're pretending that it's a humid day by powering it down to 65 to 70% of its normal RPM until we have more than one zone calling.
Okay, and for people that are looking for who their rep is, these questions are printed out and they will go to marketing and they will reach back out to you. Assuming you put all your information in when you registered, they will reach back out and give you your rep's name or have your rep call out to you. Next question, what combination thermostat and damper to use to control fresh air into a home, and it will only allow ventilation when temp and humidity are good?
Well, so basically by utilizing our RedLINK 8000 or the Prestige IAQ and having an outdoor temperature sensor in the advanced settings, we can control the fresh air from an EARD damper based on the outdoor humidity and temperature parameters that the contractor sets up in the advanced configuration mode.
Okay, and that's also one that I would reach out to my my rep for a little more explanation. And our last question, Rod, are you ready for this?
I'm ready for that.
Is the Part 1 zoning webinar available yet? Good question. I'm not sure. They didn't send
And
me.
I can answer that question. Thank you both. So the Part 1 zoning training should be up on the website a little bit later this week. We had lots of great information and great interaction in last week's training, and we will make sure to get that up on the website, and we will include that link in the email that we send to you following this webinar. And I just want to say thank you to both Frank and Rod for answering those questions, and thank you to Rod for providing that technical presentation today. Great information. We hope that you found this information was helpful for all of you. Please join us on Thursday as we are going to give you another opportunity to learn about our zoning portfolio and take yet another more in-depth look into our zoning application. So please share the details with your teammates or your coworkers and join us on Thursday for our second session on zoning applications. Additionally, we have launched a resource page on the Resideo.com website where we are posting the recordings of our webinars like I mentioned earlier. Please refer back to those sessions and share those with your teammates if they were unable to attend those live sessions. And then one final reminder to the contractors who did not include your NATE ID on your registration form and you would like to receive credit for attending today's live session, please send your first name and your last name and your NATE ID number to homes.university@resideo.com within 1 week of today's live training session in order to receive credit for today's training. And then two final things to note before we end today. You are going to be prompted to complete a survey regarding our webinar session. Please take a few moments to provide us with your feedback on today's training that you participated in. We are looking forward to offering several additional training sessions over the summer, and we want to hear your feedback on today's session, especially on any topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. And then you will also receive an email from us in a few days that includes some follow-up information along with the link to that webinar page. And we will also be referencing back to that zoning part 1 session for your reference as well. Thank you so much for joining us for today's zoning training. We look forward to having you join us again for a future training session. Thanks all and have a great day.